Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh. Matt Continetti is, of course, a columnist for Commentary Magazine, for the Free Beacon, and now for the Free Press. He's also a regular participant in the Commentary podcast, and he is the senior fellow for domestic affairs at the American Enterprise Institute. Matt, I want to begin with a post by Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota yesterday. She posted a quote. The quote read, "Do not offer thoughts and prayers as you systematically enable such tragedies. Do not claim prayers are sufficient when children die as they pray. Do not pretend you do not understand. Lydia, 16, Minneapolis." Now, Senator Smith added no comment. How do you interpret that, and what's your reaction to the general anti-prayer reaction on the left? Matt Continetti.
Well, my reaction, Hugh, is outrage and a large measure of befuddlement. You know, President Trump and MAGA have a knack for making Democrats defend the indefensible and attack the commonsensical. And in this case, the response by so many Democrats to the horror in Minneapolis has been to somehow denigrate prayer and, by extension, Bible-believing religious people. And that's a large part of this country. That's almost a super majority of this country. So I think it's clueless from the Democrats. I think it's condescending. I think it's an empty ritual on its own to simply attack prayerful people after every time we have one of these awful events. Shooting happened in a state that has remarkably strict gun control laws. And all of the firearms involved in this just awful, awful incident were purchased legally. So what is it liberals are saying? What is it they're for? All we know is that they're against, and they seem to be against either talking about the trans identity of the shooter, and they're against prayer. This is an untenable position for the left.
I have a theory. I'll test it out on you, Matt, because you're about as bright as anyone around. The Democratic Party was a liberal party that was built on the Catholic working people, especially the Catholic working people of Italian and Irish ancestry who went to Mass. They moved into a left-wing party over the last 20 years that became secular absolutist, especially on issues like abortion, where they didn't want any religion in the public square. And now they've ended, the end stage leftism is to go full Marxist-Leninist and hate religion. Are they dancing on that cliff?
I think some parts of the party are already there. They're off the cliff. I think you're right, Hugh, to point out that the most telling divide in this country is over religion and over whether you identify as part of the Judeo-Christian tradition, whether you affiliate with a specific church, whether you regularly attend religious services or not. That question alone explains a lot of our political divide and a lot of our political positions. And so I think we've seen in some of the expressions from the left and from high-ranking Democrats since the shooting in Minneapolis has been just a revelation of their far left secularism, and not just a view that religion shouldn't be in the public square, but a really menacing attitude toward religion in general, to mock people praying for the victims and for the families of the victims of this attack would, I think, even just 5 years ago be seen as beyond the pale. But unfortunately, that's where we are now as a nation. It's
a
not
couple of days
before
the Minneapolis murders, the Democrats gathered in Minneapolis and they began their proceedings with a land acknowledgement, which is itself a sort of Gnostic prayer and an attack on the West. And I was shocked by. Did you hear it? Did you hear what she said? It's really a condensed assault of the Democratic Party on everything the West has achieved.
And you know what it shows is that the Democrats have learned nothing from 2024. And I know we've talked about that on the show before. But when you think about the reaction to what's happened in Minneapolis, when you think about the DNC meeting that was coinciding with the events in Minneapolis, and you see that this Democratic Party has no leaders, it is hemorrhaging money, it is hurtling towards socialism, as you say, true socialism, And it has more than just the economic critique, this cultural critique of the West, as represented by the land acknowledgement starting out. That is not a party that can win a presidential election. And it doesn't seem to me like any Democrat is willing to say that in a position of authority.
There are none. I'm going to talk with Matt during the break. It'll be on the Big Weekend Pod, per usual, and over at YouTube. And then he'll be back after the break. During the break, we're going to talk about findings of the Naval Postgraduate School. There have been 119 of these incidents, but no thoroughgoing study of the shooters. On the other side, we're going to talk about Lisa Cook and some other innovations by Team Trump. Stay tuned. I'm back with Matt Continetti. Matt, after the terror in Minneapolis, I went to look for, has anyone done a study on the shooters? And I found that the Naval Postgraduate School's Center for Homeland Defense and Security has classified 118, now sadly 119 attacks on schools have occurred since 1999. These are different from shootings at school. The Washington Post keeps a different, a shooting can occur at school and not be an attack on the school, but there have been 119 attacks on random people at schools in 26 years. But they don't have any profiling. Do you think the FBI ought to provide the public with a profile of school shooters?
Well, absolutely. And it shouldn't obey the dictates of political correctness in doing so. I mean, just anecdotally, when we look at these attacks, we find that they tend to be committed by younger men in the throes of deep mental illness. And there usually multiple red flags occur before the shooting. Few people are surprised when one of these young men acts out in these horrific ways. And what I think it speaks to, Hugh, is that we have a serious crisis of mental health in this country, and particularly among young people. And I think we should have a full-scale national research effort. We should devote the HHS, right, to looking into this. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. should be looking into this and to look at the causes of this explosion of mental illness and what can be done to address it. And I think that one measure that needs to be considered is more control of these individuals that we know to be dangerously mentally ill, more paternalistic control to make sure that they're on medication, to make sure they're receiving treatment. Because once they give that up, once they slip the bonds of supervision, they are more likely to commit just heinous acts like we saw this week.
And I think Doug Ducey attempted to do this in Arizona after Parkland and came up with a very good study, but it was a state effort. It's not national, and it did not bring to bear the resources of the federal government. Do you think we'd learn anything if we studied it, or would we just end up saying, I asked Mark Zuckerberg directly once, could you predict who is going to be a killer? And he said no, based upon metadata. But I'm beginning to wonder about that. Do you think we can?
Well, with innovations in AI, it might be easier to predict, or there might be more warning signs. But I think, Hugh, ultimately comes down to the community. And what I've been struck by after every one of these shootings is when you talk to people in the community, you always hear, oh, well, not so much. There was something going on with that kid. There was something going on with the family. And part of the problem is we have such a lack of community in this country that we don't trust each other as much as we used to. And we're more suspicious, and we're less likely to say something if we see something going wrong. And I think that's the norm that we have to reestablish, a sense of community and a sense that if there is someone who is clearly dangerously mentally ill, we cannot be afraid to speak up. I think too many people are afraid to say something.
And we have to get over that. I'll be right back with Matt Continetti. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Matt Continetti is my guest. Matt, you're going to be living with J.D. Vance for a long time, and I'm very happy about that. But, I'll be in retirement, and you'll still be in the lists talking about what J.D. is up to, because the vice president is able. He's very gifted. Here's what he had to say in a clip I saw this morning, cut number 1.
Does Mondami, when you hear him speak, Is this a man who feels gratitude for the United States of America? Is this a man who feels grateful for all of the opportunities, the incredible bounty of this country? I don't know the guy, but my sense is he's had a very good life in this country. It would be nice for him to occasionally show a sense of gratitude instead of just attacking the United States for all of its problems.
Now, this is a counterplay in football, Matt. This is not what one expects as a way to attack Mamdani, but he did. After he had gone after the people who attacked prayer yesterday, I think JD is becoming a tribute of common sense and the vast middle in America. What do you think?
I agree. First, Hugh, I have to say there's no retirement allowed for you. You're not going to get out of this. You're going to be talking about JD Vance for a long time, too. Look, I think JD Vance is taking on an increasingly public role in the administration. I think that's good for JD Vance. I think it's good for the administration because what we find is that in interviews, he's remarkably talented. And in speeches, he's getting better with each additional speech. And he located, as you suggest, a huge vulnerability on the left when all of these figures on the left and in the Democratic Party began mocking the idea of prayer after a mass shooting, a horrific murder of children like we saw this week. And he gave a very, I think, effective post on X where he said, look, you guys have lost all sense of reality here. People pray because they want to help other people. They want to show solidarity with them because they think it works and because, you know what, we know it works. And so, yes, I think he has exhibited an instinct for what issues will always get the 80% of the country on his side. And that's a talent that he shares with his boss, President Trump.
Now, I have a suggestion for a secret sauce, which is shared by Marco Rubio and Tom Cotton and a few other people. They are parents of young children. And the gerontocracy that sits atop America is rapidly losing touch with the concerns of parents. And they're not concerns that I had because I didn't have to raise my kids with devices and with school shootings. Do you think that's going to be a shift in America along the lines of people who have younger children and children in high school to worry about?
Well, I think it's related to the divide over religion. It's the divide over family. If you're married, if you have kids, more and more you are on the right side of the political spectrum. You mentioned the candidate Mamdani for mayor of New York City. His movement is based among young people, childless young people, who come to New York City, and they are far left, and they have no space, they have very few job prospects. But they have a totally different worldview, totally different sense of responsibility and commitment than someone who is married with children. And yes, so I think that's going to be a major divide in our politics going forward, especially as, we have fewer marriages now that are actually more secure, the latest research shows. And that's exactly right. Cotton, Rubio, Vance, they're all family men. And so they're going to be able to speak to families in a way that someone like Mamdani, someone like Kamala Harris, someone like AOC just really can't.
Now, I have two more quick issues for you, Matt. One, Lisa Cook and the firing of the Federal Reserve governor. It's a case of first impression. I do not believe the Federal Reserve has a constitutional anchor that allows its governors to be beyond the reach of the president. Do you?
I don't, because the language of the statute is so vague. The act says that the president can fire for cause. And unlike other statutes, it doesn't say what cause is. And that gives the president, I think, incredible leeway here in order to fire Ms. Cook. And so I think also to assert that somehow the Federal Reserve is completely independent is just fictitious. Of course, it's political. All institutions have ended up being political in our day and age. And because it's political, it means that there has to be some amount of accountability for the institution. And I think that's what the president is saying.
And a very, very last question. You and I are Virginians. I am voting for Winsome Sears already, but Spanberger, who's got a lead, is doing her best to give it away by being indifferent to the idiocies of Northern Virginia school districts and the refusal. She said she won't work with ICE. Do you think Winsome Sears can catch up?
Well, I think she's already gained some ground, Hugh, in the polls. She's seized on the trans issue, especially as it relates to public school kids. It's put Spanberger on the defensive. That sort of issue, I mean, it's an 80-20 issue. That hurt the Democrats in 2024. It could hurt Spanberger in Virginia in 2025. So I think until the Democrats have a better answer on this issue, including issues of crime, because Virginia is affected as well by the crime and disorder, they're going to have to look over their shoulders, including at Winsome Sears.
Yeah, I remind people, Ed Gillespie almost knocked off Mark Warner, and there was no money there. I'm hoping the Republicans pay attention at the national level. Matt Continetti, thank you. Follow Matt at Continetti. Read him at the Free Press. Read him in commentary. Read him at the Free Beacon. Follow his stuff at the AEI. And, of course, listen to the Commentary podcast.